The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. This will be my last show for quite a while, so I'm glad you could all join me. Yesterday I did a show on Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang, who is running for president on the Democratic side, and I kind of did a commentary video, which I'm doing quite a few of lately, and I used an interview he did with H2, H3, H something. Somebody I'd never met before. Didn't seem that interesting to me, but maybe he's more entertaining elsewhere. And I thought it went pretty well, but I got a lot of Yang followers on the stream, and it was kind of interesting to observe their commentary. I'd say a couple of things. One, so let's start with the legitimate criticism they made. So a number of people on the chat mentioned the fact that I misrepresented the Freedom Dividend, that indeed Yang had said that the Freedom Dividend would replace welfare, So, I don't like to be told I'm wrong, right? And I don't like to be wrong. So I went out and went and do some research. So the first thing I did was I went to the yang2020.com website, yang2020.com website, and I clicked on the tab, which is everywhere, you can't avoid it, the Freedom Dividend, which is his policy statement. And he has a bunch of stuff here about the policy, about the Freedom Dividend, about the universal basic income. And I think I read all of it. And I read the bullet points, the goals, what he would do as president, all these quotes. I think I read the whole thing. And there's absolutely zero in this that says that the universal basic income will replace welfare. I mean, nothing. So, all right, but I'm open-minded, and you guys know him better than I do. So I switched, and I went to check some other interviews, and I came across his Ben Shapiro interview. I think somebody said that in the Ben Shapiro interview, he says UBI will replace welfare. So I went to the Ben Shapiro interview, and I looked it up, and I watched the whole interview. And yes, he says it. All right. I mean, if he really believes it, it would be good if he actually put it in his policy statement. If he really believes it, he should bring it up as part of the interviews. But he did say it in the Ben Shapiro. I think Ben Shapiro pushed him on it or asked explicitly, and he said it. He said it was an opt-in, and it would, if you opted in for the Freedom Dividend, for the UBI, you would not be eligible for welfare, any kind of welfare, according to what he said. Now, my criticism stands. If UBI does not replace welfare, not just is a substitute for it and you can opt in or out, but replace it, then I'm against it. What UBI has to do, the only value in the UBI, is that it dismantles the whole mechanism of welfare. It dismantles the pressure groups. It dismantles the bureaucracies. It dismantles the incentives. It completely dismantles the entire idea. Of welfare. And all the costs associated with it. And then I'm willing to talk about UBI as a step towards doing away with the welfare state at all, completely. But yes, UBI then becomes more efficient, more productive. It gives people money directly. It doesn't create these weird incentives. It doesn't build a whole infrastructure. It doesn't create a whole multiple government agencies. I think Yang said there were like 136 welfare programs. I think there are more than that, particularly if you go to the state level. Then I'm with you. But if you're going to make it opt-in, and then first of all, there'll be massive pressure, massive political pressure to increase the welfare benefits to more than $1,000 a month, so that they can compete with the UBI. I mean, Yang does not understand pressure group politics. He doesn't understand welfare politics. He doesn't understand that if he's creating a competitor to welfare, there are massive, from nonprofits to bureaucracies within the government to recipients, massive pressure groups, massive interest groups who will lobby to maintain the welfare and to expand it so it can compete. So it's hopeless. So while, again, I like the geekiness of Yang, I like the fact that he likes technology. He kept saying, particularly in this interview with Ben Shapiro, which was very different than his interview with H3, that he's pro-technology and he's pro-progress and he's pro-economic progress and he's pro all these things, right? But, on the UBI, my criticism stands. And then people said, you don't understand, he has all these policies. So I went to his policy page. And whoa, you're blown away. Like, the long lists of policies. Long lists of policies on everything. I mean, he even has a policy about MMA fighters. I don't know what the deal is, but there's a policy, a presidential policy on empowering MMA fighters. And he has a policy about NCAA athletes. And he has policies about autism and about, the penny and, life skill education in high school and all kinds of policies. And again, all this did, and I went through these. I went through them. And what are the policies? Well, all the policies, all of them, are basically ways in which the government is going to manipulate our behavior. Can it dictate, can it guide, can it determine how people behave, what they should do, what they shouldn't do. Basically, Yang is a geeky central planner. Instead of everybody else who is like Trump, who's just a power-lusting, emoting central planner. He loves being CEO of the economy. Yang is like a thoughtful, geeky central planner. And of course, he has to do certain things. So he's for the green, the green energy plan, but he's not really, because he's pro-nuclear, for example, which I give him credit for. And he realizes that the Green New Deal is nutty, so he's pro it, but he has all these caveats to it. He's pro-Medicare for all, but he wants private insurance as well. So he's trying to appeal to the leftist nuts, and at the same time, he is trying to manage our lives. He's trying to be a central planner in charge, right? And of course, here are his followers who claim that robots are going to take half American jobs. Oh my God! Just like machines took all of the agricultural jobs, and just like sewing machines took all the sewing jobs, and robots are going to destroy America. I mean, it's just hysteria, meaningless hysteria. It's Luddites. Luddites have always existed. Luddites have always existed within the realm of technologists. So it's not unique to people who are unrelated to technology. This is just, economic ignorance. I explained yesterday why robots will not. They'll take your job. They're not going to take my job, but they will take your job, and they'll take many of your jobs, and you better figure out a path on how to create jobs, how to train yourself to do a job that a robot can't take. And that's not going to be easy. So I agree with all of you that it's going to be hard. It's going to be very challenging. The next couple of decades, few decades, are going to be very, very challenging. But get a grip. Your moral responsibility to yourself is to figure out a solution, not to have somebody else from Washington, D.C. dictate a solution for you. All right, if you have questions, then you can use the Super Chat feature on YouTube, and that's where it is. I don't take questions on Facebook. I try to follow the chat a little bit, but I don't take questions there. But feel free to go to YouTube if you have a question. One of the advantages of talking about these political candidates and so on, once in a while at least, is that a lot of people watch the shows. A lot of people who've don't know who I am, don't know these ideas at all, watch these shows by huge margins. And they're exposed to ideas that they've never heard before. And maybe they'll go and watch an episode like I've done, like on morality, on ethics, maybe they'll watch an interview, and maybe through me they'll go and read an Ayn Rand book, or go and listen to some of Ayn Rand, or listen to Leonard Peikoff on Ayn Rand University and Ayn Rand campus, which is the ultimate hope, and I have tons of evidence that actually happens. If you want to spread objectivism, go spread objectivism the way your comparative advantage is, and where you're going to address large audiences and get the most bang for the buck. Everybody should do it in their own way. There is no one way to do it, but if you know anything about the Yaron Brook Show, and if you follow the Yaron Brook Show, most of the episodes are not about presidential politics. I've done a few, and the number of people watching them has been so high, and the number of people adding me, subscribing has been so high, that I figured it's a good entry point into new audiences that are typically not exposed to my idea. So you can all do what you all want to do. All right, I wanted to talk about not just Yang, because Yang is just one among many presidential candidates, but generally about the presidential candidates and why I think none of them really has a clue, and none of them can solve the fundamental problem of making America great again. And I think America's in decline. I've talked about this a lot, that America's in decline. I think America's in accelerated decline under Trump, was already in accelerated decline under Obama, and it's just intensified. And I think you're going to see it in the years and decades to come, that America, from every respect, from economic and elsewhere, is going to be in decline. We're already seeing it with the fact that all we can get is a pathetic 2% growth to GDP, and we get excited when it's 3%. And I was looking at GDP numbers from the mid-'90s to today, and there were quarters in the 2000s and in the 90s where U.S. GDP grew by 6-7%. And those years were not fantastic years. They were just good years. I mean, there are years where the U.S. economy could, if freed up and liberated, could grow at 6-7% GDP a year. So we're already in decline or in stagnation. And we've got a bunch of presidential candidates, from Biden to Warren to Yang to Bernie Sanders to Trump, who are all trying to make the argument that they can, improve America, make America great again in some, in each one of their own versions. And the reason none of them really can, and none of them really has any chance, is because none of them understand what America is. None of them understand what made America great. Whatever greatness is still in America, and a lot is still in America. None of them understand what it is about America even today that is great. And if you don't understand what America is, if you don't understand what made America great, if you don't understand what made America an exceptional country among all the countries in all of human history, if you don't understand what made it possible for America to grow at GDP rates that are similar to China's, but at a time when nobody else had capital, when nobody else had knowledge, where we had to make it all up. We, not me, Americans of the 19th century had to make it all up. If you don't understand how that is possible, then you can't bring about greatness again. And from the programs of every single presidential candidate, you can see their utter ignorance of the idea of America, of the moral idea that at the heart of what America is. They all vary. All of these presidential candidates have different agendas. They vary. They're distinct. There's a difference between Trump and Biden and Elizabeth Warren and Yang and Sanders and so on. But they all share one thing in common. They all believe that the way to fix problems is to grow government. The way to fix problems is to have more programs that try to manipulate us and try to dictate us how we should live and what our life should be like. They all want to centrally plan our lives, our economy, who we trade with, who we employ, how much we pay them. They all, at various levels and various degrees and in various areas of our life, want to tell us how we should live. They want to place government at the center of everything. And the individual, nobody talks about the individual. The individual does not matter. And yet, what is America? What is America about? What is the source of American greatness? The source of American greatness is the individualism inherent in the founding documents of this country. The source of American greatness is the idea of individual rights. The idea of the freedom of the individual to pursue his own life, to pursue the rational values necessary for his own life. The idea of America is the freedom of the individual to choose his own path, to choose his own values, to choose his own ideas, and to act on those values free of coercion, free of authority, free of presidential candidates telling them what you can and cannot do, how you should and shouldn't live, who you can and cannot employ. And on it goes. How much of your money is not yours and should be taken away from you? That is the antithesis of what American greatness is. It is the antithesis of the idea of America. The Founding Fathers were very diligent about creating a system of government that made our politics to a large extent impotent in controlling the lives of the people. They wrote a clear, articulate constitution that tried to limit the scope of what the government could do in our lives, that tried to leave as much freedom as possible to the individual. The whole point of America was to reduce the power of the politician over our lives and to leave us free to pursue our happiness. The whole core of the American system, is the idea of the pursuit of happiness, the idea of the selfish, self-interested individual's inalienable right to use his mind, to choose his rational values in pursuit of his own happiness. And that the role of government was to protect that ability. It was to protect it from other people who might use force against them. It was to protect it from government itself, and that's why we have a separation of powers in government. It's why we have the division of powers. So that one branch of government cannot violate the individual's rights, another branch of government can overturn it, overrule. That's what this country was about, and that freedom, that inspired an energy, inspired an individualistic attitude among Americans in the late 18th century, only in 19th century, that inspired them to become entrepreneurs, to become pioneers, to build, to create, to make, and to create spiritually what is called today the American spirit. That spirit of, I can do it. I don't need anybody's help. I can stand on my own 2 feet. No challenge is too small for me. I can achieve my goals. I can achieve my happiness. I can achieve my wealth. I don't need people to take care of me. I'm an independent person. I will befriend those who I want to befriend, but I owe nobody anything just because they need it or just because they desire it. I am my own person. That American spirit built the richest, most successful country in human history from nothing. America was a third-rate colony in 1776, a colony the British barely fought over because it wasn't worth it. And yet, within 130 years, it was the mightiest economy and military power in the world. Not because of government policies, not because of central planning, not because of UBI, not because of industrial policy, not because of any of those things, but because of the spirit that the political system inspired, the spirit that freedom inspired, the spirit that brought millions and millions of poor, ignorant immigrants to these shores who then built a life for themselves, who invested in themselves. A spirit of Americans who created great industries. A spirit of Americans who pushed the boundaries of the frontier westwards to discover new lands, cultivate those lands, build new towns, build new cities, build railroads, and build the country, the greatest country in all of human history. And then slowly, over 150 years, intellectuals who resented this individualism, politicians who wanted and sought after more and more power, have slowly chipped away at the greatness of the soul that is America. And what are we left with today? A bunch of people rallying for Medicare for all because individuals can't take care of their own health insurance. Individuals rallying behind some kind of UBI, $1,000 that somebody magically gives to you because people can't get a job and can't make enough money to feed themselves. Really? Really? A government that regulates and controls and licenses every single activity we engage in. Why? Because, I don't know, something bad might happen. That's the American spirit? That's American greatness? No, that's the opposite. That's us becoming like everybody else. That's us becoming like Europeans. Not Americans. There are very few Americans left. People who say, I don't want your UBI. I don't want your money. I don't want your guns at my head taking my wealth away. I don't want your health care. I can take care of my own health care. I can buy my own insurance, find my own doctor. And I know, I got some of the criticism I got yesterday. He's a rich guy telling, poor Americans how they should live. Yeah, I'm a relatively rich guy. I'm proud of that fact. I made all the money that I have. I started out with very little. Don't you want to be rich? Shouldn't you strive to be rich? And I didn't make this money because of anybody giving me a UBI or a handout. Why should you? And I'm not smarter than a lot of poor people. I don't pretend that what is possible for me is not possible for other people. Or what is right for me is not right for everybody else. This idea that somebody from one class, a supposed class, from one economic position can't talk about the truth is nutty. How will you ever advance? Just by listening to people who agree with you? The truths about the world don't care about whether you're poor, middle class, or rich. The truths about the world don't care about what skin color you have. They don't care about where you come from. If you have the right mindset, if you adopt the right spirit, the American spirit, the individualistic spirit, the spirit of the pursuit of happiness, then America is still a place where you can succeed. And what none of these candidates are doing is making the America even more a place that you can succeed. So they're all garbage. They're all horrible. They're all anti-American. They're all destructive. What we need is a rebirth of that Americanism. Those American ideas, whose representative in the 20th century is Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand's ideas, following the Founding Fathers, of what individualism really is, how to pursue it. And until we, the voters, we, the public, embrace the idea of individualism, embrace the idea of freedom, yeah, we're going to get these crappy politicians. And yes, I can analyze Bernie Sanders. I mean, he's a joke. He's absurd. He's ridiculous. He lies. The stuff he says makes no sense. It's completely illogical. Yang is a little bit more sophisticated, but at the end of the day, he doesn't know what he's talking about because he comes at it from a perverse perspective. And what he wants to do is be another CEO of this country. He wants to run my life and run your life. No, we should say, no, we should stay. What we need is a movement that says no to all these politicians. A movement that says we want our lives back. Keep your hands off my life. I remember that. You remember that placard during the Tea Party? People had "Keep your hands off my Medicare," which expressed the entire contradiction that was the Tea Party. What we want is a placard that says "Keep your hands off my life." What we need is a political movement to demand them getting their hands off our lives. Not coming up with new programs on 3,000 different things. Really, people, Yang 2020, just another central planner. This is the best you can do. This is the best Silicon Valley can generate. Now, granted, compared to the, central planner in chief we have right now, almost anybody's better. But God, we should be able to do better than this. Better than any of these candidates. All they want to do is make America Europe. All of them. In different variations, and Europe in different time frames. But none of them have a vision for what America is. None of them have an understanding for what American is. None of them are real advocates for this country, for what it stands for what it is possible to it, and for what its spirit really is. For what its spirit really is. Nobody. And unless we demand somebody like that, there will be nobody running. Somebody says nobody's running on that platform. That's right. But they play on for us. If all these people get excited about Andrew Yang micromanaging the economy, then you're going to get lots of people micromanaging the economy. Elizabeth Warren has a plan for everything, just like Andrew Yang does. Unless we start talking about the fact that what we need is how to dismantle the plans that already exist, dismantle the welfare state as it already exists, dismantle the tax code as it already exists, dismantle government as it is today. Until we start demanding that, we won't get it. People ask, who's the candidate you support? I don't support any of them. It's not something you have to do. They're all bad. All of them. Every single one of them are bad. Not just bad. Awful, horrible, disgusting. And I don't support any single one of them. Now, at the end, if there's a choice between two and I have to vote, I might vote for the less of two evils. But I won't, actually, because I live in Puerto Rico, and as a Puerto Rican citizen, I can't vote for president. So luckily for me, I don't have to vote. But you will have to vote between two. But my point is, isn't that sad? Is that what you really want? Isn't it possible to get something better? Shouldn't we be trying to do better? And look, the only way to do better is to advocate for a different set of ideas. The only way to do better is to educate yourself about what America really represents, to educate yourself about freedom and about individual rights, to educate yourself about what it means and what is required to pursue happiness, and then go let people know. Tell people about it. Argue for it. Discuss it widely. And those of you who haven't done it yet, you should go read Ayn Rand desperately. Desperately. Yeah. All right. That's my little spiel for today. Let's see. I'm taking Super Chat questions if you're interested. I have a few questions here. Let's see. Jennifer asks, some people say feeling hate is psychologically damaging. However, considering that moral evaluations are necessary to living rationally, hate can sometimes be an appropriate emotional response. How can one engage in necessary evaluation life requires while not allowing negative emotion to damage your psychology? Well, first, absolutely, I am very, very much pro-hate. I think hate is a necessary emotion. It's something that protects you against the damage that some people and some institutions and some things can cause you. So hate is an important emotion, and I'm a strong believer in feeling hate. The challenge is not letting that hate or any emotion dominate you, guide your thinking, determine the way you approach reality. At the end of the day, what any emotion is there is to help you understand yourself better. And of course, you live it, but you don't let your emotions rule you. So experience the hate, understand the hate, embrace the hate. I certainly embrace the hate. There's certain people I hate. Now, I don't let that dominate my life, but if I see somebody that I hate, I repel automatically. My body just, ugh. And that's healthy. That's good. Because that person is bad for me. My emotion, my body has just told me that person, it reminded me that person's bad for me. Stay away. Warning signs, not good. But do I obsess about that person when no. I don't let the hate dominate my life. The hate is there. Put it aside. It's gone. Right? So hate is an important, I think, healthy emotion when it's applied correctly, like with all emotions. Applied correctly in a sense that you feel hatred towards somebody you value, you think you value, there's a contradiction there. The emotion is your emotion. It's the sum of the integrations in your subconscious. So you have to figure out what's going on here. Either your conscious evaluation is wrong of this person, or your integrated response is wrong and is giving you false information, and you better fix it. Yeah? Emotions are what they are. You don't judge them, but you evaluate them. Are they appropriate or aren't they appropriate? And if they're not appropriate, then you've got to think about why you're having them and what's going on, because again, emotions are part of living. They're a survival mechanism. They're important to your life. You want them to be consistent with your conscious thought. You want them to be consistent with reality. But I can tell you now, there are people I hate, and some of you know this. I mean, I hate politicians. I hate most politicians. I hate Elizabeth Warren. I hate Trump. I hated Obama. I hated Bush. I hated Bush. Right? So most politicians I hate. But then in my personal life, there's certain people I hate. I stay away from them. I try not to engage with them. But it's good to have that category. Bad people, good people, people I hate, people I love. Stick with the people you love, avoid the people you hate. to the extent that you can. All right, somebody's saying there were other libertarians on YouTube. Look up. I don't see that as a. Why is that a question? Is that a question? Was that a question mark? I don't see a question. You're just advertising these other people using Super Chat. I mean, the people you list, who I'm not going to name, I only know 2 of them, and I object to both of them. So Stefan Molyneux has become, I think always was to some extent, but has become a collectivist, a racist, an anti-Semite, always was an anti-Semite. Tom Woods is and has always been an anarchist, and I despise. I think anarchism is very, very, very damaging to the cause of liberty, to the cause of freedom, to the cause of individualism. Very, very, very damaging. I consider anarchists, so-called anarcho-caps, although I've said many times, anarchism and capitalism are contradictory terms. They can't go together. But I consider anarchists enemies of liberty. To a large extent, ultimately, if they're serious, they are on the side of the communists and the fascists. And that's true of Tom Woods, same thing. He's an anarchist. He's got all kinds of views that I object to. He's affiliated with an organization I think is horrible. And the other ones I don't know. So, but those 2 I'd stay away from. I mean, you can do whatever the hell you want. I would stay away from them. You asked a Super Chat question, so I'm commenting whether you wanted me to or not. All right, let's see. Why do some people consider service jobs as lowly? Brain surgery, for example, is a service job, but it's highly skilled. Well, because I think, because they associate service jobs with McDonald's and with things like that. Software design, programming is a service job. But by the way, I just have to say, somebody said Molyneux is not a racist, maybe a race realist. Let me be very clear here. Race realism is racism. Race realism is the epitome of racism. It is disgusting. It is despicable. It is irrational. It is immoral. Just because you call something realist doesn't make it valuable or good or realistic for that matter. But the whole obsession about race is racist. Get over it. Get over it. As I said, if you want to ask a question, Super Chat is available. Why are some, I don't know why, but there is this, I think it comes down to this Marxist notion that that real work, real production, is done with your hands where you would produce a good, a thing. And that anything that doesn't produce a thing, a material object in reality, remember, Marxists are materialists, is not a real job. It's not real production. It's not real creation. And this is really real Marxism, right? This is what Marx held. Now, most people don't know they're Marxists, but certain things infiltrate into the culture. Why are we so obsessed with the loss of manufacturing jobs in America? When we lost 99%, 95% of all agricultural jobs, and nobody seemed to care. Nobody seems to care. Because manufacturing is with your hands. You're making a product. It's what Marx talked about. It's what the proletarian did. And Marxists had a profound, deep, real impact on the world in which we live. Right? Many of the ways in which we look at the world, think of the world, talk about the world, is kind of shaped by that. So service jobs are not real. They don't produce. Plus, look, a lot of the people who look down at service jobs are kind of what people call the kind of the leftist elites. People who are brain surgeons. Ooh, people working in restaurants. What's that? So, they lump it all together. But what's wrong with working in a restaurant? What's wrong with any job where you're producing a value that somebody else values enough to give you money for? All of those are good. the idea that there's some jobs that are good and some, I mean, if it's producing a real value, then it's a good, whether it's service, whether it's production, whatever it is. Remember, finance is service. They hate finance. Programming, of course, consulting, all of these are service jobs, but they hate them. They always say, oh, isn't it a tragedy that the brightest students in America go to finance and consulting when they could go to manufacturing? Really? I mean, the leverage you get in finance and consulting is far greater. The impact you have is far greater than you do in these other fields. And you actually contribute a lot more to the productive ability. But they can't get that because, again, they're so connected to concrete material reality, whether they're directly or indirectly influenced by Marx. All right, have you seen the documentary Tim's Vermeer? It is about testing hypothesis that Vermeer used an optical invention to aid in his painting. I haven't, partially because I guess I don't care. I'm curious. I've heard that it's fascinating, and I'll probably watch it at some point. But I love Vermeer. I love his paintings. I've seen many of them all over the world. And, if he used an optical invention, great. But the spirit of his paintings, the illumination, the light, what the light tells you about the world, as Vermeer sees it, is truly remarkable, and that doesn't come from gimmicks. So I'll probably see it, but Vermeer. The other thing about Vermeer, which is hard to explain, but don't judge Vermeer based on books. Don't judge Vermeer based on posters. You have to see the originals, and you have to see them lit right in the right setting. There's some at the Frick Gallery in New York. I think there's one at the Metropolitan Museum. There might be one in Washington, D.C., one or two in Washington, D.C. at the National Gallery. And then, of course, there's some in Amsterdam, at the big museum in Amsterdam, whose name I can't pronounce. And try to see, whenever you're in a city that has a Vermeer, try to go. And now it might not do anything for you, but try to see what makes it special. Stand in front of us to see what makes it special. I think you'll realize how special it is. Now, it's not photography. It's nowhere near photography. It's not photorealism at all. There's nothing about it that's photorealism. And it's interesting because the Vermeer topics, the subjects are pretty boring. They're not that interesting. What makes Vermeer interesting, a great artist and an interesting artist and somebody I enjoy, is how he does it, how he portrays the scenes that he portrays. That is truly fascinating. And again, I encourage you when you do it to see, not in a movie, not in a poster, not in an art book, but if you can, go see the original paintings. I'm generally a big fan of museums. Somebody asked who I should take down next. So please, yes, if there's anybody you think that I should comment on, positively or negatively, it doesn't have to be a take down, it could be a take up, then please send me names. You can email me at yaronbrookshow.com, or you can send me a message on Twitter or Facebook or somewhere, but email is probably the best. And let us know if there's anybody you would like me to comment on, positively or negatively. What is the proper role of the federal government in a situation like what is going on in Portland? Open insurrection and government allied with the insurrection. Well, let's not exaggerate here. I don't think the federal government has much to say in what is going on in Portland. This is primarily in terms of police. This is the job of the local police and Oregon state government and state police to keep the peace. And of course, the problem is that we have a theory of free speech that says that anybody who wants to march should be granted a permit to march, even if they're obstructing people's nice Saturday afternoon stroll in the park. Now, I don't believe that. I don't believe you have a right to assemble, particularly you have a right to assemble on your property. You have a right to rent a hall and do an event. You might have a right to rent a space and even in outdoors and do an event. You don't have a right to just march down the street, block traffic, and interfere with everybody else. I don't care if you're on the right, on the left, on the middle, or anything. You don't have a right to disrupt the lives of people who are not interested in what you're doing. Now, Portland and Oregon have an obligation as a government to protect innocent people from violence. Now, the violence here is from two sources. It's from a variety of different racist groups, white nationalist groups, and Antifa. And this has been going on in Portland for well over a year. And it is not just one-sided, although Antifa gets a pass and the white nationalists always get accused of everything, but both parties are to blame, and both parties need to be stopped. And both parties need to be put in jail. Both sides of this need to be put in jail. And it's a travesty that the police are not doing their job. On the other hand, it's a travesty that these marches are going on in the first place. I mean, again, you want to have a Proud Boys rally? Rent a hall. I'm with my family in the park. Suddenly you have to show up, and everybody opposes you have to show up, and everybody's yelling, and everybody's screaming at one another, and maybe violence erupts. Get a break. Rent a room, as they say, right? Don't bring your don't bring your confrontation and violence into my park. So I am not an advocate of all of these marches and all of these publicly staged events. I think in these cases both sides represent real evil. I don't think there's anybody there except the innocent bystanders who happen to get caught up in it who is innocent. I think one is provoking and would love to start the violence. The other is there to be violent and would love to provoke, and they're both basically equally evil. I don't see good guys any more than I saw good guys in Charlottesville. Everybody was a bad guy in Charlottesville. It's not like there were what was Trump's statement? There's some good people there. There were no good people there. I'm sorry, nobody counts as a good person who stays, and on both sides. Now, there might have been good people marching against the white supremacists, but there were no good people on the white supremacist or white nationalist side. If you're at a rally and you think you're there for good reason, even though it was organized by white nationalists, so why are you going to begin with? But let's say you accidentally, you didn't realize, you didn't read the poster, and you didn't notice who was sponsoring the rally. And then suddenly you start hearing chants from the people who are organizing the rally, who are the centerpiece of the rally. Blood and soil and Jews will not replace us. You either take a side against them or you walk away. But if you stay, you're not a good person. You're not a good person. Anybody who stays in a rally with a bunch of white nationalists, any more than leftists who stay in a rally with a bunch of Antifa people who are making those kind of statements, is not a good person. So, but the national government has no role to play there unless this turns into, kind of an internal civil war. It's not. It's not any. I mean, indeed, it's less. It's less disruptive to the lives of Portlandians than violence in Chicago. It's two gangs, just like gangs in Chicago, going up against each other every Saturday in a park somewhere, and the local government is not doing anything about it. The people who should be infuriated are citizens. They should vote. They should vote the people who are they should vote their politicians out of power because they're not doing the one basic thing the politicians have to do, which is protect them. They're letting these marches go on and on and on with no end. Their only purpose is violence. The only purpose is provocation. And that needs to be stop, but it's not a reason for the federal government to enter unless you've really got civil war, any more than it's a reason for the federal government to enter because you've got all these shootings in Chicago, which are much worse. Many more people are getting killed in Chicago than in Portland. If you don't want to be exposed to the mess that is in Portland, don't go to the park where they're fighting. There's a gang fight every Saturday in this park in Portland. Don't go there. Now, I think it's disgusting that that's allowed to happen, but for 99.9% of the people who have any sense, who have half a brain, they know how to avoid it. Just stay away. Why are you asking this? What do you think of anarcho-capitalism? I've said, I think it's a contradiction of terms. I think capitalism requires a government. I think government is a necessary good. And I think anarchism is anti-liberty and anti-freedom in any variation. And there is no such thing as anarcho-capitalism. All anarcho is statism. All anarcho is collectivism. All anarcho is subjectivism and deteriorates into what we typically think of anarchy: gang warfare, people slaughtering each other in the streets, no rule of law, and ultimately a strong man coming to dominate and taking everything over. That's what anarchism leads to and becomes. So I'm very, very much opposed to anarcho-capitalism. And if you're interested in more, I've done a debate on anarcho-capitalism. You can find it on my YouTube channel, just through anarchy or anarchist Yaron Brook debate. It was a debate in Poland last year by one of the followers of, it turns out, of Hoppe, who's one I think is a really, really bad guy. And you can see in more developed fashion my full view of anarcho-capitalism. I can't spend every show talking about it. It seems like every show it comes up. And by the way, I've studied all the different examples of anarchy, and they all lead to the same exact thing: violence. Is it possible to foreclose on the national debt? Sure. I mean, you could just not pay it, but then don't expect to raise any more debt in the future. But at the end of the day, that might be the only solution when one day we have a government that wants to move towards liberty, towards freedom, and has racked up tens, but potentially hundreds of trillions of dollars of debt, and there's just no way to pay it. One way is just to default on it and to tell bondholders, you should have never bought this debt. This was always risky. Governments do default on their debt, just like Greece did. Now, you could print money, but print money is worse because print money is then punishing your citizen by inflating their currency in order to pay back the debt. So that's it's not right. So default might be the solution for the national debt in the very long run, and it wouldn't be a disaster if it was done for the right reasons and under the right circumstances. Are there any unpublished lectures by John D. Lewis? Always loved his historical courses. So did I. I wish he was around. We really need John Lewis's voice in these. I mean, what John Lewis would have thought of what's going on in the world today, what he would have thought of Donald Trump. But we really miss John, and John's voice would have been incredibly important today. But I don't know that we have any unpublished lectures of his. The Ayn Rand Institute, I think, has published everything they have. I don't know if anybody else has, maybe. But I think, unfortunately, what there is what you have. And, of course, you've got his books. So John D. Lewis, I encourage you all to look for John D. Lewis's lectures and look for John D. Lewis's books on history and history of warfare. Fascinating stuff, really good stuff. And I always loved hearing him and loved his support. Greg makes a great point. Anarchism is exactly what's going on in Portland. If that's the world you want to live in, where the police basically don't exist, and two private police forces, one called Antifa and the other one called whatever it is called on the right, take to the streets, argue their points, and then when they can't come to an agreement, which is obviously they can't, they fight it out. That's anarchy. That's exactly how anarchy works. And people say, oh, there's no incentive for two police forces to fight. Well, look at Portland. They're fighting. By the way, the mafia is a good example of anarchy. The way the mafia works, the way the mafia functions, the way the mafia fights, the way the mafia, it doesn't recognize government. It pretends that government doesn't exist. There is no rule of law. It makes up its own rule of law. And you as a businessman might affiliate yourself with one set of legal institutions called the X family, and somebody else might affiliate themselves with another group, the Y family. And when the two businesses have a dispute, the X family and the Y family go to war. That's anarchy. So if that's the world you want to live in, I don't. I'd rather have America today. I'd rather have Europe. I'd rather live in Europe than in a so-called anarcho-capitalist state. I mean, I can't think of a worse place to live, really. I have abandoned thinkers online in recent years. I judge none of them to be fully rational. How do you find inspiration to fight for rational self-interest in a world on a course towards tribalism? Where do you find your joy? I mean, I find my joy everywhere. I love what I do. I love the intellectual challenge of the fight. I've said this many times. I'm a fighter, and I enjoy the fight itself. And I love the challenge. I love the thinking. I love listening to people, even people I disagree with, and trying to find what I think the flaws in their thinking are. So I love these kind of commentary videos that I do. But also, I find joy everywhere else in my life. I find joy with my wife and my son, and I find joy with other parts of my work. You know, I do finance work, and I love the work I do there. I find joy in going to the beach. I find joy in seeing good movies once in a while, listening to music. I find joy in the art that I'm surrounded with in my home. You know, in both my homes. You know, I find joy in everywhere. In my friends. I find joy with my friends, hanging out with them, you know, having a glass of wine, or just sitting around and talking, or you know, or having an argument about something important to both of us. I mean, arguments are fun. You know, we're talking about not something that is earth-shattering, but an argument, an interesting intellectual challenge, something, you know, having somebody you respect that you can argue with. I mean, that's a blast. I mean, there's so many places I find joy. My life is filled with joy, and your life should be too. I mean, you got to find people you love and you care for and you respect and you admire and you enjoy hanging out with, and you should surround yourself with people like that. And you got to find activities that you love doing, whether it's a job or whether it's hobbies that you take very seriously, or whether it's just relaxation that you love. And of course, I'm big on surrounding yourself with art that you love. I think art is incredibly life-enhancing and incredibly joy-enhancing. So, yeah, I mean, I'm frustrated. I'm pissed off. I'm angry. But I find I can get over that pretty quickly, right? I watch a video of Donald Trump. I'll get my, you know, I'll watch a video of Andrew Yang or Elizabeth Warren or something like that. I get super angry. And 5 minutes later, I can sit down and watch a great movie and forget it all. Or I can have a conversation with my wife and forget it all. I mean, you can't, it goes back to the question about hate. You can't let things like that dominate you. You can't let things like that, you know, just overwhelm you. You've got, I mean, I've said this before in my shows. It's really important. You got to find the things that you are in control of in your life. You're in control of the people you hang out with. You're to a large extent in control of the job you do, of the career you engage with. You're in control of your own epistemology and your own thinking. You're in control of your own morality and the values you choose to pursue. You're in control of the environment you live in. You know, Jordan Peterson says, make your bed. I think that's kind of silly and superficial. I say, make the place you live in beautiful. And that's not about making your bed. My bed is never made. But you know what? There's beautiful art everywhere. And the unmade bed does not detract from the beauty of the art. Make your life, make your surroundings beautiful. Make your surroundings inspiring. Make your surroundings full of joy. Focus your life. Politics, yeah, dabble a little bit, fine. But focus your life. You know, you might have colleagues who piss you off because they're irrational. But when you get home, focus your life and your career and your colleagues. Focus everything you can on what you can control. And then do as much as you can to make what you control consistent with your values, consistent with joy, consistent with a life worth living. What you cannot control, you cannot control. So yes, human beings do it, so it's in their control. So that should piss you off. And then it'll piss you off for 5 minutes and then put it aside and go do something amazing. And you might hate your boss. One option is to find a different career, but another, but if you can't, then you have to put that hate aside and do the stuff you love doing in your career, in spite of that. All right. Since you don't drink Corona, have a Diet Coke and a hot plate of rice and beans on me. Thank you for the wonderful talk as always. Man, you're completely off base here, right? I don't drink Corona. I don't drink Diet Coke. And I don't eat rice or beans. I don't know what's up with you guys. You just don't know me that well, right? I only drink 2 drinks, basically. I mean, third sometimes, when I indulge. I drink water. Here's my Fiji bottle, right? Not always Fiji. I'll drink water. I drink red wine. All kinds of red wine. Love red wine. Oh, actually, no. I drink 3 things. What am I even thinking? I drink a lot of coffee, sometimes tea, and sometimes when I want to indulge, like really good fruit juice. Fresh, really good mixture of fruit juice, maybe with a little bit of ginger in there for a little spice. That's what I drink. And I'm on a low-carb diet, so I don't eat. So today, I went out and I ate a rack of ribs with sweet potato fries, which I love. I love sweet potato fries, and red wine. That was cool. But on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, each one of those days, I'm going to a different 3-star Michelin restaurant in northern Spain, and that's going to be so cool. I love great food. Above and beyond a rack of ribs and sweet potato fries, I love really, 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 particularly, sophisticated chefs from Spain. I love that food, so I'm gonna splurge on some amazing Spanish, high-end food in Spain. 3 days in a row. 3 days in a row. All right. But thank you. I'm not going to answer the question. That question, it's just, we're trying to do an intellectual. I know I talk about food, but I don't talk about women in that way. What is your favorite documentary video? Did you like The Scent of Man by Jacob Bonsky? I did. I liked The Scent of Man. I liked Cosmos. I liked Cosmos by the original one with Carl Sagan. I thought a lot of those episodes were fantastic, just fantastic, very life-enhancing, reason-promoting, science-promoting. I mean, Carl Sagan had some problems, but I like those. I've liked, I don't know. I don't watch a huge number of documentaries, and I don't retain them necessarily. So I don't know. I'll think about other documentaries that I've liked. And I mean, I loved the documentary on Ayn Rand, Ayn Rand, A Sense of Life. So I highly recommend that, Ayn Rand, A Sense of Life. I think you can still get it on Netflix. All right. Theory to pay the debt, 7 trillion of debt is foreign, but other nations owe us 5 trillion. Print 2 trillion to pay the difference and have 14 trillion left. Cut spending to 3 trillion max, pay the debt in 15 years. All right, I mean, why 3 trillion spending? I mean, 3 trillion is way too much. So my plan is simple. My plan is cut spending to 1 trillion, and over time, cut it more than that, although it will take time to get it to 1 trillion. But, start with 3 trillion, but have a plan to cut it to 1 trillion and lower. And I wouldn't print any money. I would just refinance the debt. Right now, the dumbest thing the Treasury is doing, and this is typical, is the refinancing short-term debt with short-term debt because it's so cheap. But right now, 30-year interest rates at the lowest they've ever been. what they should be doing is replacing the short-term debt with 30-year debt, and then cutting spending to below 3 trillion. So you start running what do you call it? Surpluses. You can start paying off the debt. But I would much prefer to just focus my attention. So, somebody's like firing a cannon out there. All right, Civil War started in Puerto Rico. Must be fireworks. Somebody's firing fireworks out there. I would much rather focus on reducing government spending to as little as possible, as quickly as possible, than worrying about the debt. I have a difficult time separating art from artists. If a great artist says something thoughtless, it shatters my immersion in his art. Any thoughts? Don't listen to what your artists say. Why do you care? I'm not interested in what artists have to say. They're not particularly smart about, well, what is going on out there? All right, it's weird. I assume it's fireworks. I hope it's fireworks. But why do you even listen to artists? I mean, Beyonce says something. Why would I even listen to it? I ignore anything an artist says. An actor, an actress says, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Because you're right, it affects to some extent my enjoyment of the art. But so I just would rather not know because it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. If they're good actors or they're good singers, I want to be able to enjoy their art. And does anybody know what Beethoven's politics are? I don't care. I mean, I know that Wagner's philosophy was terrible. But you know what? His music is sublime. So some of his music is sublime. So to hell with that. To hell with that. I just focus on the music and ignore that. Nah, somebody says, run, you run, they're coming for me. I mean, when I'm significant enough, when I'm got a big enough presence that they're coming for me, we'll be on the verge of victory. Nobody's coming for me, but it is curious that there are these massive explosions outside, and I have no idea what it is. But it sounds like it's paced like a fireworks show, but it's literally, it sounds like it's coming from just here, but I can't see fireworks, so I don't know. Yeah, it's a fireworks show, because now they're doing the boo-boo, where everything goes off at once. Because of you guys, I've missed the fireworks, because I could probably see it from my windows on the other side. That's too bad. That was a little weird. It wasn't construction, it was definitely fireworks. Let's see. Okay, final question we have here. I'm late to this stream, but I asked last night about your thoughts on Aviator or Howard Hughes. Did you answer it? If not, what are your thoughts? I did not, so I apologize if I missed it yesterday. I liked the Aviator movie. I liked it and didn't like it. I guess I didn't like it because it was so focused on his mental illness, and it was so hard to watch and so upsetting to watch. I mean, he was a genius, one of the great industrialists, one of the great entrepreneurs, one of the great men of the early 20th century. And he was mentally ill. I mean, he was, I think he was schizophrenic. And I thought the movie dwelt on that too much. So it was too naturalistic in that sense. There were some great scenes, though. I loved the scene where Howard Hughes is in front of Congress, and he basically tells them to go to hell. I so wish a modern-day CEO would do that. And you can actually find, if you go to YouTube, I mean, YouTube is amazing. You can find video of Howard Hughes in front of Congress. He doesn't do it quite as elegantly as the script has it in The Aviator. It is, after all, a script. But he does it pretty damn well. So, you can find tape of Howard Hughes, basically telling Congress to shove it, not in those terms, but to mind their own business, and that they didn't know what they were doing or didn't know what they were asking about on YouTube. So I would encourage you to look it up if you want to have some fun. It's an enjoyable thing. All right, I think we're done. I guess I did, I find it interesting that, I follow the chats a little bit on the thing and some of the comments afterwards. But if you look at the comments here on Yang and on Bernie, it's fascinating to me how much of it's ad hominem. So the biggest complaint is that I'm rich and old. I don't think of myself as old. I guess I am. I would have thought of myself of old when I was your age, so I would have thought of people my age as old. And I guess I am old, but I don't think of myself as old. Old and me doesn't really, fit. I'm young in spirit, even though my body doesn't always agree with that. And certainly the ideas I advocate, and let me say this, these ideas, the ideas of youth. Young people today think they're radicals, think they stand for something. I mean, you guys are wimps. You're all so conventional, middle of the road nobodies. Yang is just another central planner. He's another one, just one of hundreds out there who want to manage our lives, who want to control how we behave, who want to run the economy. You have socialists. You have conservative nationalists. You have all, these ideas have been around forever. They're boring. They're uninteresting. They failed. They're uninspiring. Ayn Rand's ideas are young. They're exciting. They're radical. They're different. They're life-enhancing. They're what young people should be marching in the streets about. Well, I said you shouldn't march in the streets, or maybe not marching in the streets. They should be what you should engage in. This is what should excite young people. Socialism? Socialism is what my parents believed in. And they don't believe in it anymore because they saw it fail. Socialism is what killed 100 million people. UBI? Redistribution of wealth? There's a new idea. We'll just do redistribution of wealth. Better this time. Oh, I could get excited about that. It's boring. If you want to be young, not just in age, but in spirit, then be an idealist. Believe in something. Believe in something interesting, something life-enhancing, something that will make your life worthy of living. And for that, you got to go read, study, and live Ayn Rand. Not all your boring ideas. They're not interesting. And so, yeah, I'm old. But, not that old. Not old, like some people say here. I'm not in my 70s. I'm not even in my 60s. But I love life. And I'm living it. And I love ideas. And I embrace them with everything in my being. And you should find ideas that you can do that with. Not your parents' and grandparents' ideas. I mean, I'm not against old ideas if they work, if they're just, if they're moral, if they're rational. But I haven't seen them. All right. I didn't call Yang a socialist, although I think he's a statist. Yang is a statist. He's a statist of a different form, but in the end, all statism is a form, in the end, is one form or another of socialism. He's not for the ownership of the means of production by the workers or by the state. He's for regulating the hell out of the means of production by the state. So in that sense, he's more of a fascist. Okay. I am off on vacation for about 2.5 weeks. I'm getting on a flight tomorrow there's a direct flight from San Juan to Madrid. So I'm excited about going to Spain. It's going to be, I love Spain. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be Spain and Portugal. I've never been to Portugal, one of the few countries in Europe I've never been to. So I'm going to spend some time in Portugal. I'm going to go to see great restaurants, go to spend time along the coast there, see great beaches, little towns, go up into the mountains, see great scenery, and try not to listen to the news and not to engage in any politics or anything else. We'll be continuing to release short videos from past talks and past shows that I've done, including we've got some lectures that I've done that haven't been released yet on my channel that we will be releasing. So you'll be able to enjoy those. You can go back and listen to some of my old podcasts and share them. But please share the content. Get in front of new people. I will try to do maybe a show or two on the road. I don't know. After Spain, I'm going to, let's see, Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. I've never been to Chile, so I'm really excited about speaking in Santiago. I've never spoken in Santiago, Chile. But I'm going to be surrounded by Spanish and then Portuguese for the next 4 weeks. And I'll try to do some shows from there as well. All of that will depend on internet, on the quality of the internet that allows me to broadcast and do something. I'm taking my equipment with me, my travel equipment, so I will try to do those shows. In the meantime, have a great life. Live, pursue your values. Pursue things that bring you joy. Pursue things that bring you joy. Pursue rational values that bring you life. And don't forget to support the show if you like it. Thank you for the Super Chat dollars. I really appreciate them. It's one great way to support the show. Other ways are yaronbrookshow.com/support and unsubscribestar.com/yaronbrookshow. All right, everybody. I will talk to you soon with hopefully share some of my adventures in Spain and in Latin America.